Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial on creating a financial calculator with Excel. And so as we go through, what we're going to do this week is we're going to build this financial calculator that's going to help you. Now, just to give you a little history, this relates to our concept of time value of money, which basically comes back to say that over time the value of money changes. In other words, that over time the value of money normally goes down. In other words, you can buy less goods with the same amount of money as time goes on. This has to do with inflation. Over time, that prices go up, right? So because prices go up, it requires you to have more money to purchase more goods. And so we should, if this is the case, we should have a calculator that helps us make those decisions or helps us understand this concept of what that value is going to be. So this is our time value of money calculator. Now, again, to give you a little history, back when I was in my undergrad program, we just had to memorize these formulas that we're going to use here that we're going to develop here in Excel. We just had to memorize them. And we would go to class, we were required to have a scientific calculator, and we would use our scientific calculators to work those formulas out. And so as you're in class and everything else and doing in tests, you'd hit these points and sometimes you just made a mistake in the way you entered something. So very easy to make mistakes. When I went through my master's program, it was great because we were required to have the big change was we had financial calculators, something like this. This is the one that I purchased during my master's program. I think at the time it cost $200. It does all the things that I used to do by hand in my undergrad program. So this was a huge time saver. I was so thankful to get that back in my graduate program. As a matter of fact, we required students to purchase financial calculators here at Upper Iowa in your undergrad programs up until about 4 years ago. And the prices come down. You can buy one now probably for $40. But about 4 years ago when I took over teaching finance, I actually stopped this practice of requiring students to purchase financial calculators because we've moved to a point in the world where we have access to Excel thanks to smartphones anywhere we go. And so if we have access to Excel, there's no reason to have you spend some money on something that you're not going to use after this class. Instead, what we'll do is we're going to create a tool in Excel that you can put on your phone because you can download the Excel app, have this anywhere you go, and best of all, you know what, it's free. So, and you created it yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and create this financial calculator in Excel. So what you'll need is a blank Excel spreadsheet. We're going to create a column of variables, and then we're going to have a place that you input those variables, and then we'll have where the answers come out, and then you'll just need to know what that information is. So as we look at this, the way that we go through and calculate this, these are the variables that we have. The first one is PV. It stands for present value. This is a certain amount of money that we have today. So if we know how much money we have today, we have a present value, right? Pretty straightforward, present value. The second number that we have, our second variable that we have, is called FV. This stands for future value. This is an amount that you would have in the future. So when you do your pro forma statements, right, you have a certain amount that you expect to earn next year, so that would be a future value. If you're doing a financial planning type exercise, maybe you know how much money you want when you retire. That's a future value. It's a value of money in the future that we want to bring. Generally, we want to figure out how much that is in today's dollars, because what we're going to do is try and make decisions based on today's dollars. So we're making decisions for the future based on today's dollars. So we're going to do that. The next one that we have is PMT, which stands for payment. Now these payments, when we have a payment, these payments have to meet 3 criteria in order for it to be a payment. A payment, number one, must be the same. Every time you make the payment must be the same. The second thing that you have to have is that payment must be made at specific intervals, like once per month or once per year or every 6 months. So when you start looking at the criteria to use payment, number one, is that amount you're paying the same? Number two, is that payment being made on specific intervals, like every month or every 6 months or something like that? And the third criteria that you must have in order for us to use payment, or PMT here, is those payments must come to an end. There are situations where you have a payment that is made, the same amount is being paid every month or every year, so you have that interval and the same amount, but they don't end. In other words, they just go until the end of your life, like a pension. That is, you wouldn't be able to use that in this situation because the payments don't end, or we don't know when they're going to end. So we have to have these three criteria. Number one, the payments must be the same. Number two, there must be equal the interval of time between those payments must be the same. And third, those payments must come to an end. So what kind of things are we thinking about? Your mortgage, if you have a mortgage, a car payment, a rent payment. Those types of things are related to payments. So this is generally dealing with cash. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight these and then turn them into with the dollar sign, so that way I know I've already got my cash taken care of. The next thing that you're going to need to know is an I, which is interest rate. So interest rates are always quoted as an annual percentage rate unless you are told otherwise. So they're an APR. That means a certain percentage that is being paid over a course of a year. That's a stated annual percentage rate. Now, because interest is not always paid once per year, sometimes we have to do a little bit with that, but you're going to have an interest rate that you're going to need. Now, as I mentioned just a second ago, those interest is not always paid paid just once per year. Sometimes you earn it twice a year, sometimes it's every month, something like that. This is that C. This is how many times interest is compounded. This is the important thing about compounding is interest earns interest. And when that happens, that's a very powerful tool that you've probably already been aware of, either with the lecture videos or with the readings in class. So C is your compounding. Okay. The next thing that we have is this idea of T, which is time. So how long? And time is generally expressed in years. So as we go through here, we have the interest rate. I'm going to just format that as a percentage. C, compounding, which is how many times per year you are earning interest or paying interest. T, this idea of time, the amount of time, and it's always generally expressed in years. And then there is this thing called MPER, which is number of periods or number of payments. Now this is a formula, so we're going to hit the equal sign. And the number of payments is going to be your T, the one above, times C. So T times C is the number of periods. Okay. Now it's going to be 0. So basically, if you are, let's say you have a savings account that pays interest semi-annually, twice per year, and you want to see how much you're going to have in 5 years. You're going to earn interest over 5 years, every 6 months, so you're going to earn interest 10 times. That's what that MPER is. How many times are you earning or paying interest? The last thing that you have is a type variable, and type is either going to be a 0 or a 1. Generally, it's going to be a 0 because, and what this means with type, it's when is interest paid or when is the first payment made, those types of things. So normally we pay interest at the end, which is why we use 0 is basic, it's just normal, so we don't, and you don't even need to enter a 0, but we generally do. At least I do in my formulas. So 0 is at the end. So we get paid at the end, which means that's when the interest is going to get paid. The other side is if you enter a 1, that shows that your first payment is, they call it generally an annuity due. So when you pay your rent, you pay rent at the beginning of a month. That way you don't skip out in the middle of the night and the landlord, they know they get their money. So you pay it at the beginning, which means you have an opportunity to earn interest for that 30 days. So that's where you'd put the 1, and it just basically changes your calculation a little bit. So that is an important thing to note, is your type is going to be a 0 or a 1. Excuse me, now that we have our variables programmed or listed, we're going to create our calculator. So normally with the calculator, what I do is I'll just shrink the rows a little bit, so that way it's not crazy. And as we go through, the first thing calculator that we want to do is a present value calculator, PV. So a lot of times you want to know how much money you need today. In other words, what's the present value going to be? So in order to create the present value calculator, pretty much with all of these, there's a tab in Excel called Formulas. And so we're going to go to the Formulas, and it's going to be under Financial. And the nice thing about these, all the variables and everything I've programmed that we've put are actually the same as the formula. So this is a PV formula, so we click on PV. Excel puts it in for us, and it brings up this nice dialog box, this function arguments box. So as we go through this, the first thing it's going to ask for is rate. That's your interest rate. So our interest rate, what we'll do is we're going to click on the B4 column, because that's where we're going to enter the interest rate, and we're going to divide that by RC. Because remember, our interest rates are always quoted as an annual rate. So if you earn interest every 6 months, you're not earning, say, 10% interest every 6 months. You're only earning half of that, so you're going to earn 5. So we would divide our interest rate by our compounding. Okay. The second thing that we go to the next one, it's MPER. And in the MPER, all we need to do is put it MPER. That's the number of payments that we're going to earn. Okay, so that are make in this case. Okay. We then have a payment area. So if you have a payment, and a lot of times we do, we just make these payments for long periods of time. So we would have a payment. Now, the thing about Excel and the way these calculations work, you do need to put a negative sign here and then click on payment in order to get a positive number on the present value. It's just the way the math works and everything else. So put the negative sign in, then click on the B3, and you're all set. The other area, future value, sometimes we just know what the future value is. So again, put the negative sign, the future value, there we go. We're all set. And then the last one, this is where that type comes in. We just put type there. And now you've created your first financial calculator. It does say something weird. It says, okay, 00. So let's just see how it works. Let's say you need $5,000. So we put in $5,000 as a future value. You're going to need $5,000. And right now you can earn maybe 4%. So you put in your 4%. It's going to be compounded. We're going to put quarterly, so 4 times per year. And oops, make sure I do that. Okay, so we're going to earn 4 times per year, and we need this in 3 years. So we put our 3 in there, and finally we're going to put our type as 0. So basically, what this means, if you need $5,000 4 years from now, 3 years from now, and our time is actually, let me format that. That is not an accounting. That's just a number, and I'm going to get rid of a couple of decimal places. There we go. So there's our time is 3 years. So we need 3 years and we can earn this interest quarterly. Basically, you need to put $4,437.25 in the bank today in order to have that money in the future. So there you go. There's your first calculation. The second one, as we go through, is going to be the FV. So formulas, put FV here. We go to the formulas, financial, FV. There we go. First thing is rate. Generally, rate is what we start with, so we do rate, and we always divide that by our compounding. MPER is next, so we click on MPER. Payment. Just like we did with the PV, we would do negative payment and a negative PV. There we go. Last one is our type. Hit enter. And there's our future value. Now, right now for this one, we only have a future value. So let's say instead we have $5,000 today, that in 3 years would grow to $5,634.13. So that works out pretty well. We also now will calculate our payment. Payments are really nice because this is one of those things, you use this one a lot. So let's say you're going car shopping and you want to, it's kind of interesting that when you go car shopping, a car salesman will say, how much do you want to spend per month? They're asking you for a payment. You never should negotiate the payment on the front end. Negotiate the price of the car, then work on the financing. But they want to do it backwards because that would help them make more money. So what we're going to do here with financial, we'll hit the financial. We find the PMT area. rate, just like we did before. It's going to be the interest divided by compounding. MPER, there we go, MPER. Our present value, again, is a negative, but this time with our future value, we can leave it as a positive. And then type is 0. I'm sorry, we do need a negative there in our future value. All right, there we go. So if we have what this does now, notice it does give us 2. This will actually tell us if we have we put $5,000 in for 4 years. What we can do is we could actually get 12 payments of $444. So this would be a way to figure out an annuity investment. So, or basically the way I think about this one, the way this would read is if I save, say, $100,000. Let's do 2 more. There we go. $100,000. Right? For if I have this much in my retirement account when I retire, if I have $100,000, and I know that during retirement I can earn 5%, and I expect, I'm going to change my compounding to 1 because I'm only going to take 1 payment per year, and I want to be retired for 15 years. Basically, my retirement that I'm going to get from this is going to be $9,634 per year during that time. So this would be a way to actually decide how much money you need when you retire. So that would tell you what that payment's going to be. Okay. Now, there are times where you're also, maybe you just need to know what your rate is. And this one is, we'll do rate because that's actually the formula. We come up here and we will come until we find the rate. There we go, rate. Now, rate's a little different because you are starting with the NPER. So you do have the NPER. You are going to enter your payment as a negative and your present value as a negative. Make sure I might have to enter that a little differently, but I'll double check it in a second. Our future value, we just put our future value and our type. There we go. So in this case, let's see here. Since it's not coming up correctly, I see that I do not want the, why did that not work right? We have our NPER and our payment. Oh, we do need a payment here, so 500. That's why, because you need to be looking at it going, why is that working? Because with this one, you either need to know what the you need to know either the future value or you need to know a payment in order for it to calculate. And so I do need to go back in and put that negative sign, nope, not there. Make sure I have it. So payment is going to be positive, and oh, my number is way too big. That's what it is. And my apologies. I didn't really work out my apologies. I really didn't work out my examples too well beforehand. So you should have, let me just redo this one for you. As you go through this particular one, we're going to go and we'll do rate. And we'll come down to rate. This is one of those times where I'm not going to hit re-record. A lot of times I'll when I make an error, I'll re-record so you don't see those. This is where I'm being real for you. So you start off with your NPER, put that in. We have our payment. Now your payment we will leave as a positive. No, we're going to put our payment in as a negative. And we're going to put our present value in as a negative. And our future value, oops, that one should be there. And when we get to future value, we'll leave that one as a positive. Okay, and then our type is just right there at the bottom. So now as we go through, we have a payment of 1,000. Let's see, payment of, I want to do payment, I'm going to put in a future value, say of 1,500. There we go. So once we have that, it calculates out as a nice percentage. Now this one, it's important to note, this is per period. Right? So this is not an annual percentage rate, it's a per period rate. So to get the APR, we need to do one more formula, and so we do equals our rate that we calculated times C. Now, because this is, I put that in as a 1 once per year, that's going to be it'll calculate out pretty much the same. I'm going to come to my home, I'll put it as a percentage, we'll add a few decimal places, same thing. But this is where if I put in, say, compounding of 12, you'll see that the rate per period is 0.23, and it comes out to a period rate of 2.71%. So that's one of those important ones to note, that we have to add a little bit more. So that gives us our present value, our future value, our payment, our rate. The last formula that we use in our financial calculator is MPER, number of periods. And so, like the others, we go to our formulas, hit financial. What we're going to do is we're going to find the NPER. There it is, NPER. And we start with this one again with rate. So we do rate, and we do divide by compounding. Payment, we are going to put in as a negative, and we are going to put in our present value as a negative, our future value as a positive, and our type as a 0. Okay, so as we go through this particular one, this would be set up, let's say we know we can earn 5% compounded monthly, and we're looking at, we don't need to worry about a time in this case because we're calculating it, right? And we have $1,000 and we need $1,500. So this one would tell us that we need 97 periods, right? So if you want to know that in years, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take your MPER and divide it by our compounding, compounding, and then hit enter. And then this would tell us it would take you 8.12 years to get that. Okay, so now you've got the calculator. All the tools that you have are here, and you can use this in a variety of ways. So the actual application will be a different video, but this gets you your financial calculator. This is what you'll be uploading for your assignment this week, so just want to make sure everything is all set and works. With that, have a great day. Look forward to working with you.